Hello and welcome back to After the Whistle Sports Podcast. I'm Dylan and I'm joined again by Jack for our second edition of the preseason college football conference over under bets for win totals. Today we're going to be doing one of the more interesting conferences. We have the Pac-12. Jack, of course, is very familiar. Um, I'll
Hey,
let
UCLA is a Big Ten team now,
I
actually.
mean, yeah, two of those teams are technically not real Pac-12 teams at this point, but I don't know. Do you have anything you wanna say about the conference before we get into these totals?
I feel like Pac-12 football has really been disrespected on the national stage, with all those after dark games, like who's like staying up till midnight on the East Coast to watch like Oregon State play, you know, Washington State. I don't know, but at least, I guess now like that UCLA and USC like biggest money makers are leaving, should get a little bit more equitable TV wise.
Yeah.
So
I think this is a great opportunity to also state that the Pac-12 hasn't had a college football playoff team since I believe Washington in 2016. Hopefully, I'm right on that. But um, yeah, they've had a lack of postseason success in general. Uh, and I think this is a different conference, at least in terms of quarterback play this year, because this is the conference that all these transfer portal quarterbacks seem to have filtered to. So, say what you like. I don't know what that says about the level of talent that the Pac 12 had last year, but this should look different from an offensive perspective for a lot of these teams.
yeah, definitely. I think what was it, 7 of 12 teams are going to be starting a transfer quarterback, probably. Is that
Yeah, I
right?
mean, we can count as we go because that
Yeah,
number
we'll go
does
we'll
look
go
that high.
through, but yeah, we'll see. All
Okay,
right. So with the Big 12, we started off with some of the less championship contending teams. I think we should do that similarly here. Uh, and yeah, bottom of the barrel. How about the Arizona Wildcats?
now watch your mouth real quick because Arizona is yeah, again, people are going to laugh at this, but this team has really improved from last year, and the current win total is at 2.5 wins. Now, let's look at their schedule like we did for the Big 12. North Dakota State, that should be a win. San Diego State, I mean, that's going to be a close game. San Diego State's a pretty good team under Brady Hoke. I think they won, what, 10 games last year? So definitely not easy. Probably have a loss on the road there. Mississippi State again should be a loss, but they have them at home, so it could be an interesting way to start the season for Arizona. But they have Cal, Oregon, Washington, USC, Utah, UCLA, Arizona State, Colorado at home, and Washington State at home. Now, North Dakota State again should be a win. I think Colorado probably should be a win. I think they should beat Cal on the road. There are your 3 wins, and that hits the over right there. I just think there are a few teams that have more question marks than Arizona going into the season. Jed Fish, I think second year head coach, has done a really nice job of changing the culture, recruiting a little bit higher talent. They have Jaden Delora, transfer quarterback from Wazoo. Really talented player. I'm excited to see what he does. Word from training camp, though, is that he's been, I think, a little bit banged up or hasn't been able to practice in fall camp. So keep an eye on that. But this team has guys who are talented. I mean, they have a couple of solid freshman wide receivers who they just brought in the last recruiting class who are pretty good. Offensive line should be a negative, but again, like they can't be worse than last year. And their defense is honestly not terrible. So I think they win 3, maybe 4 games. But ultimately, I like the direction of this program.
I mean, I'm with you. I think you know saying the direction the program is going is a good one is not that high of a bar considering they went 1-11 last year. So I'm with you. I think they win a few more games. I think this team wins 2, 3, 4 games. Another couple, transfer quarterback you mentioned. big transfer wide receiver Jacob Cowing out of UTEP caught 141 balls for 2,600 yards and 13 touchdowns. Is also huge. The defense was the worst red zone defense in college football last year. You know, it's tough, but I agree their recruiting class is a lot better. I don't know if I necessarily agree with you on the nature of which wins. I think Dakota State and Colorado are definitely potential ones, but I even think Arizona State at home is a winnable game. I believe that's late in the season as well. It's a big rivalry game, obviously. Uh, you know, at Cal, maybe, probably not on the road. Mississippi State at home, probably not. At San Diego State, probably. Yeah, I mean, God, it's really hard to find wins on this team's schedule. I mean, will they go better than 1-11? I think so. But is this a team, that can remotely be considered a real football program? I don't know if I'm sold.
Yeah, one thing to note about that San Diego State game is the early line came out and they're 5.5 point underdogs in that matchup.
Um,
So honestly, that's not that bad. I guess they're on the road, so that's
that's a
also
winnable game. I agree.
that is 100% a winnable game. And like people look at Arizona and what they've been for the past what, like 3 or 4 years now as like a really bad football team. But I'm telling you, like they have recruited at a higher level than what that program is used to. I'm just going off of freshman preseason All Americans. They have a tight end by the name of Keon Burnett, who was a top ESPN 300 recruit and is projected to be one of the top freshman tight ends in the country. So, I mean, he is a guy who should be able to be a weapon for Jaden Delora, and I do think that they can be a much improved football team. So I definitely like the over 2.5 here, and you're getting that at minus 140 odds, which like isn't that terrible. So let's move
All right.
on. Let's move on, Josh. We got Arizona State
Talk
right next
about
door. Sorry.
yeah.
All right, Arizona State under Herm Edwards. I just want to preface their overview by saying that they're one of the more distracted teams in the offseason. Of course, like there have been reports that come out that Herm Edwards has like a bad culture, that they've already had to fire coaches for recruiting trail violations. Um, he has not been what Arizona State has wanted him to be as the head coach and leader of this program. They've been very underwhelming while he's been there. Jaden Daniels, the quarterback from last year, transferred to LSU and should be taking that job. So a lot of question marks for this team. Vegas has them at the over-under of 6 wins. They have a very easy non-conference schedule containing Northern Arizona, Eastern Michigan, and they also have Oklahoma State, which is harder. But again, 6 wins. I'm leaning towards the under. I think they're going to be pretty bad. I see wins against Northern Arizona and Eastern Michigan, but I also see a bunch of losses on the schedule. Again, like where's that 5th win coming from? I think they're going to lose to Washington. I think they're going to lose to probably UCLA. They might beat Arizona, but again, that's 3 wins. That doesn't get you to the 6. This team is bad. I really do think this team is not that good. And listen, this could be a hot take, but I wouldn't be surprised if Arizona ends up with a better record than Arizona State at the end of the year.
That is a relatively hot take, but in terms of broad thesis level wise, I'm with you. I think Herm Edwards is not a good football coach. They won 8 games last year. I know, but I think a lot of that was some of the NFL talents that they lost. A lot of losses to the transfer portal. As you said, it's not that favorable schedule for them. Uh, I don't think this team wins all that many games, to be honest. The going through the actual schedule, like you did, I mean, Northern Arizona, yeah. Eastern Michigan, yeah. Like, I mean, after that, like, probably they'll beat Arizona on the road. But like maybe Colorado on the road. Like, I don't know. Like Washington at home. Like these are a lot of at Washington State. I don't feel confident about any of these games really. Maybe Oregon State at home. But yeah, I don't like the culture that Herm Edwards has created. I mean, I don't think this team has a single player on the offense or defensive first team all Pac-12. They have maybe like what one linebacker and one O lineman on the second team. I mean, this is just like I don't think this team is well set up, or at least as experienced as some of the rest of these Pac-12 returning squads.
Yeah, I just want to do a little dive into the roster real quick, like we've been doing for all these other teams. But quarterback position, like I said, Jaden Daniels transferred to LSU. Um, it looks like Emory Jones, the former Florida Gator quarterback, will be taking the first team snaps for Arizona State next season. Definitely an interesting player because again, like he has raw
Oh
talent.
yeah, Florida ran the duel with him and Anthony Richardson, right?
Yeah. So I mean, Anthony Richardson won that job. Emory Jones, of course, then leaves, but like I just don't see enough talent on the roster to win more than 6 games or even 6 games. Like they
No.
have Cam Johnson, a really solid slot wide receiver, should be an NFL player. Offensive line, they have a ton of transfers. They're starting 3 transfers or 2 transfers and then a transfer tight end. So they also have 3 transfers on the defensive side. So looks like a mumbo jumbo of a bunch of different types of players. Really nervous about this team, and honestly, I think this might be the last season for Herm Edwards at Arizona State. And this failed experiment, this nightmare can finally come to an end for Arizona State fans.
Yeah, I agree. I think Herm Edwards is getting fired. All right. Should we talk about Cal Berkeley?
Let's do Cal, yeah, because I feel like they've out of all the teams that I've kind of studied going into the season, like I haven't spent much time at all on Cal. I feel like every year they're always just Cal, which maybe you maybe you have more um, input into this, being in LA. But what do you see from Cal this year? And of course, their over under is listed at 5.5 wins, so very close to Arizona State. Um, Non-conference schedule includes UC Davis should be a win, UNLV should be a win, Notre Dame definitely a loss, and I think that's it. Not a terribly hard schedule, but I don't like them winning more than 5.5 games.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. This team is pretty mid or worse. Lead running back Christopher Brooks transferred to BYU. Uh, this team is a pretty run-oriented team. Chase Garbers. I think he was like a 4-year starter. Maybe he's gone now. I think they got transfer quarterback from Purdue, Jack Plummer. Uh, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts about him coming from the Big Ten. The defense is okay. Third down defense was really bad. Their linebackers, pretty solid. They got a transfer from Washington, Jackson Sermon, as well as uh, Femi Oladipo, uh, who should be a pretty solid linebacking duo. Their D line's got some good size. Their secondary is pretty solid. I think this will be a pretty solid defensive team. But I think their offense is going to struggle. And I'm with you that, looking at the schedule, uh, some of these, road games, I think are going to be tough if they really just cannot put up enough points to, play with some of these maybe, more dynamic transfer quarterbacks that some of these other schools picked up.
Yeah, this offense is going to be pretty tough to watch, I feel like. But if you are looking for some positives, last year, Cal actually was pretty solid in the conference in terms of points per game from a defensive standpoint. I feel like they've always had pretty solid defenses under Justin Wilcox, but again, the offense is brutal. I've heard some people compare them to Iowa with a worse defense, which might be like the most insulting thing you can call
Yeah,
a team.
that's a pretty solid comparison, though. Definitely a worse defense, and honestly, probably a worse offense. Definitely a worse offense.
Yeah, like, I just don't see them scoring enough points to beat the likes of Notre Dame, oh, even Washington State, Oregon, the big boys. Interesting that the Oregon State game might be the game that you need to look at in terms of hitting that over for the 5.5. I think I like Oregon State a little bit more going into the season, but I could definitely see Cal winning 5 games. If you like their defense, then maybe you want to bet the over on the 6 games. But again, not much to see here from Cal going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a large division in the Pac-12 this year between the haves and the have-nots, and I think
Yeah.
there are definitely two pretty stark tiers between you know, the Utahs, the Oregons, the USCs, the UCLAs, and you know, most of the rest of the bunch. But we'll get there as we continue.
Yep. I think let's go now to Colorado, who currently has an over/under win total of 3.5 wins. They play a non-conference at Air Force, which again, that is not a gimme. Air Force, I think, is favored to win that game. So just just some
Oh,
quick insight on that. They play TCU and Minnesota to round out their 3 non-conference games. That might be the hardest non-conference slate in the Pac-12. Just looking at it from a composite standpoint, like none of those games, I think Colorado is going to be favored in. Uh, Air Force actually had one of the better rushing attacks last year in all of college football. They were definitely a team that you can't overlook. I'm pretty sure they won maybe 9 games last year and went to a bowl game. So already better than Colorado in terms of last season's success. TCU, again, not a gimme. I think they lose that. Minnesota, I think, is way better than Colorado. I think they lose that. Colorado could maybe win. Like, there's definitely a case where Colorado wins less than 3 games this year. And
yeah, I'm looking at the schedule. I came to the same conclusion. I was like, wow, they might win 2 games. Like, you know, the first 4 games are almost for sure they're gonna lose all four in my mind, probably. At Arizona, and so the next four at Arizona, Cal at home, Oregon State on the road, Arizona at home, or Arizona State at home rather. I think they win 2 of those 4 games, maybe. After that, Oregon Oregon at USC at Washington versus Utah. They don't have a prayer, which means I really don't see this team winning more than 3 games in any stretch of the imagination.
yeah, they're bad. They're definitely pretty bad. Um, Again, like that's such a tough non-conference schedule. Just looking at their roster right now, they do return a lot of players from last year, but they also get R.J. Sneed transfer from Baylor at wide receiver, who should give them a little bit more of a passing attack that they didn't have much last year. This team just lacks talent from top to bottom, which is unfortunate because Colorado used to be one of the like shoe-ins for winning 6 games in the Pac-12 just a few years ago, but they are projected to start a bunch of freshmen on defense. They're projected to start a bunch of transfers on their offensive side of the ball. So, not quite sure what we're going to see, but what I am confident about is that they're not going to win 4 games. So, I like the
Yeah,
under a lot here.
I like there's just question marks everywhere. I mean, on the defensive side, the pass rush, the defensive backs, the amount of transfers this team had. I mean, in the on the offense, I mean, there's no the quarterback play. There's the running back room's all right. The wide receivers, their top wide receiver, Brendan Rice, transferred to USC. Their number two, Dimitri Stanley, went to Iowa State. They got one guy, RJ Sneed, you mentioned from Baylor. Uh, but this is going to be a tough year, I think,
Yeah.
for
Let's
Colorado.
let's move on to another team that really is looking to build upon a pretty bad season last year in the Stanford Cardinal. Their over/under is now set at 4.5 wins. They have non-conference games against Colgate. Uh, who else they play? Notre Dame and BYU. So Colgate should be a win, but BYU and Notre Dame are pretty tough. Honestly, losses at both. And then you're looking at, can they win some of these Pac-12 games? And I think they could. I think four is probably a good number. Five might be stretching it a little bit. I think I like them better than most. Again, this team doesn't have that much talent, but quarterback Tanner McKee is I think one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the conference or even in the country. I think he's gonna have a pretty solid year. But Stanford as a program has been on a downturn for the last couple of years. They have an older roster filled with upperclassmen, but no real difference makers besides Tanner McKee, who I already said. 5 games? Can they win 5 games? I think they can actually. Like I think they're gonna win 5 games. I'll probably hit the over a 4.5, but I'm not confident about it.
Yeah. I'm a little more confident in Stanford than some of these other teams, well coached, Tanner McKee, 6'6", 225 NFL build. I think a big problem with their offense last year was the offensive line, which I think should return with more experience. On the defensive end of the ball, definitely, a little bit more of a struggle. Freshman David Bailey is a huge recruit who will be a factor in the pass rush, as well as edge rusher Stephen Herron, who's back, who, this team's pass rush last year was really bad.
They were the worst. They were the worst defense in the Pac-12, I believe, last year.
They got some, Kendall Williamson, back at safety. Kai Blue Kelly is another NFL caliber corner. They added Patrick Fields from Oklahoma at safety. I think this team is better. Obviously another hard non-conference schedule, but I think this team wins 5 games.
Yeah, so that's I think that's our first team in this range that we've taken the over on, and I think it's really
Arizona, but yeah, if
Arizona, yeah,
we're down on Cal and Colorado, somebody's got to win these games. I guess.
Yeah, but also Arizona was 2.5. Like, dude,
yeah.
they can win. They can win 3 games in their non-conference, maybe. Like, okay, let's move on to some of the better teams. It's up to you where you want to go. You want to go to Washington State?
Sure.
Washington State projected, or the over/under is now set at 5 wins. I really like them to hit the over here. I think Washington State will be a bowl eligible team. Of course, we had the whole issue last year with the coaching change. I don't want to go into that now, but if you remember correctly, I believe for the previous head coach was like an anti-vaxxer or something. Like he didn't want to get the COVID vaccine, so like they fired him mid-season. They hired Jake Dickert, who again like is pretty good, and they ended up winning 7 games last year. They went 6-3 in the conference, which far exceeded everyone's expectation. This team is better than last year too. They brought in quarterback Cameron Ward, who has one of the more interesting stories in all of college football. He actually transferred from Incarcerate Ward. I believe they're FCS or like Division III or something.
Wow.
He had, I think, one of the craziest stat lines in like the entire sport. He set every single record. He set every record at that level. Every quarterback record you could possibly do: yards, touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, throwing touchdowns, you name it. He was amazing. He was the Lamar Jackson of Incarcerate Ward football. So I'm really excited to see it.
Can I tell everybody the stat?
Yeah, go for it.
4,650 yards and 47 touchdowns.
I mean, that's absurd.
Those are like video game numbers. Another thing to add is that former head coach of Incarcerate Ward, Eric Morris, is now the offensive coordinator for Washington State. Came with him.
Yeah, and you know what I think is really important about this pickup is that they had a guy in Jaden DeLaura who was a really solid quarterback from last year, and they went out and decided to bring in someone else and basically forced Jaden DeLaura to transfer. So I think they have really high expectations for this kid. He is on NFL draft radars. He is on my dark horse list for like all the late season awards. I think he's going to put up crazy numbers, and this team is good. I mean, they brought in really good freshmen. They had a solid recruiting class. Um, Andre Dollar, who's got a sick name, freshman tight end projected to start. Their offensive line is pretty experienced. I think they lost some guys in that regard, but if anything, this should be one of the more fun teams to watch in the conference. They play Idaho, Colorado State, and Wisconsin as their three non-conference games. I think they're going to lose to Wisconsin, but they're going to beat the two others. And then I think they beat a lot of these middling teams under their air raid offense. Listen, I really like this team. I think they're going to win 6 games. They might win 7 or 8 games, which would be pretty crazy. But I know for sure that if I'm Wisconsin, if I'm Oregon, if I'm USC, if I'm Utah, if you're the teams that are projected to win 8 or 9 games, this is one of those matchups that you just don't want to play because you're going to have more talent than them, but they're just going to throw the ball all around the yard. And if Cam Ward is going to be a superstar, watch out. But I for sure like the over here. This is probably the most confident over that we'll talk about today, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, honestly, I agree. I think this is a 7-win team. I mean, you mentioned a lot about their offense. I'll talk a little about their defense. It was the best in the Pac-12 red zone defense last year. Their defensive line is really good. Ron Stone is a first team All Pac-12, and Brennan Jackson on the other side. This pass rush was good last year, and it's gotten even better. The linebackers, they lost a couple big pieces, but Deion Henley is a transfer from Nevada who had 94 tackles and 4 interceptions last year. Secondary has some transfers, has some question marks, but I think the defense is pretty solid too. And obviously, we talked about the dual threat passing and running attack that is Cameron Ward. Uh,
Real
yeah, I
quick,
mean,
could we talk about how old this defense is? You can count, let's see, one, two, three, four, five, six. You can count 6 4-year or 5-year players on this roster.
wow.
Just incredible. Like they have so many 5th-year guys, like redshirt seniors. They have a ton of redshirt senior transfers. This team is probably one of the older units in the country. So
It honestly, it would not shock me if on September 24th this team beats Oregon at home.
yeah,
I mean,
listen, that's what this team is.
at Wisconsin, that's a really tough game, especially early season. Uh, but yeah, some of the rest, like they're like against Oregon, like the spread will not be more than like 4.5, probably six
Yeah.
and a half, maybe.
I mean, what do you think the ceiling is for Washington State? Like, could
I,
they
I,
could
I think
they
I
win the
think the
Pac-12?
ceiling is probably eight wins.
8 games.
Uh,
I'd probably agree with you there.
I can't really see this team winning 9 or 10 games, but I could see them winning 8 games. Maybe. Uh, we'll see. All right, who's next?
Let's move on to just across the state and go to Washington, who hired a new head coach, and I think Kevin DeBoer, who came from Fresno State, who had a really nice season last year.
Wow, yeah.
Or Kalen DeBoer, my bad. But they're projected, or their over-unders at 7.5 wins. They have non-conference games against Kent State, Portland State at home, and then they have Michigan State at home. Um, Again, they some other important scheduling stuff is they're at Arizona State, they're at Oregon, they're at Washington State, but they have Oregon State, Colorado, Arizona, and Stanford at home. 7.5 is pretty tough, I will say. I
I mean,
might
this
be,
team won 4 games last.
yeah. Well, they obviously they had other problems. Head coach Jimmy Lake, I think, got fired midway through the season for like they said that he was like hitting a player or something. So uh, there were some other problems going on there, but this team has talent. And again, like we talk about some of these teams, I think one of the common themes when we go through the teams that have fired their coach and hired a new guy, but have traditionally recruited at a high level that Washington has. It's interesting to see how the new organization will be able to like utilize the talent advantage they have. Again, they have guys like Giles Jackson, wide receiver who was there last year. Jackson Kirkland is probably going to be drafted in the first 2 rounds as one of the better left tackles in the country. Offensive line in general is really good. Um, they have transfer running back Aaron Dumas, who I believe is from New Mexico, who's projected to start. Then they have transfer quarterback Michael Penix. So actually, I want to spend more time on this because this is one of the more interesting quarterback battles in the country. With the intel I have now from fall camp, the quarterback battle is currently in between Michael Penix, transfer from Indiana, Dylan Morris, I think he started last year. He's going to be a redshirt sophomore, and Sam Heward, who was a 5-star coming out of high school. But what I've heard is that Michael Penix has been the best guy in camp so far, so I think he's going to start the season. Personally, I kind of watched all of these guys in different capacities. I watched Penix in Indiana, and then I watched Dylan Morris, who I think started against Michigan last year. Sam Heward is the guy I think has the highest ceiling for this offense.
Oh,
Former 5-star, has a ton of talent. I'm curious to see why he hasn't been able to take over that job. But I guess if Penix is playing really well, you can't sit him. So interesting to see what they're going to do during the season with those 3 quarterbacks. So I think it's not a bad quarterback room, but if no one's standing out yet and Michael Penix is the guy you're going to, that makes me a little bit more worried about this team.
yeah, I really worry about the quarterback play, to be honest, especially with Michael Penix. I mean, when DeBoer came from Fresno State, Jake Hayner, who was Fresno State's quarterback, who's really good, almost came too, which I think this would be a very different team with DeBoer and Hayner. I think Dylan Morris is okay. I think Penix is talented, but is very inconsistent. I think this team's O line you mentioned is really good. The defense, also pretty good. They were number one last year in pass defense. They were second in the Pac-12 in defense
Yeah.
overall.
They lost, I
Uh,
will say, they lost a lot of
but
cornerbacks
yeah,
to the
but
NFL.
Kyler Gordon. I mean, a lot of that was Kyler Gordon and Trent McDuffie. Both first round cornerbacks from Washington, right? Uh, you know, so this defense, they had some people leave. I think they also had some transfers come in from various places. But what's their win total set at?
Their win total, they're at 7.5.
Oh, ooh, I don't know if this team's winning 7.5 games. After winning 4 last year, like I know it's kind of a different team, but you lose two like top 20, 2 of the best quarterbacks in the country, and think you're gonna win 4 games more than last year, especially when like your quarterback situation is like the same, if not like a little improved. Like I don't know. I think this team wins. Like let's see, they're gonna beat Kent State. They're gonna beat Portland State. You know,
Stanford, they'll probably beat Stanford.
they'll probably beat Stanford. They'll probably beat Arizona. They'll
They'll probably beat Cal.
probably beat Cal. You know, I guess they just. I mean, maybe Colorado. I don't know. I guess this team could win 5, 6, 7 games if everything goes their way. But like, I think 7 games is like their ceiling. Like,
Yeah, listen, I'm actually really curious to see them play Michigan State because Michigan State is the better team, but I don't think
it
the
is at
talent,
home though.
yeah, I don't think the talent disparity is actually that great. If you look at individual rosters, if you look at Michigan State, and again, I'm a Michigan fan, so whatever. I'm biased, but no, I'm not though. Like Washington on paper is not that much worse than Michigan State. The question is, will Washington be able to implement what they're trying to do with the new offense, and will they settle the quarterback situation before the season to where you can feel more confident that they're at least going to put up a fight? Because road games across the country are hard no matter who you are. So I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan State is only favored by 3 points against Washington. Would you say that that's a solid assessment?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean on the road, that's fair. Maybe 3.5. But yeah,
And
that's fine.
listen, I wouldn't be surprised if Washington wins that game. Really, like that's probably the best case scenario. But you
Yeah,
look at these rosters on paper. They're not like that. They're not that much. Washington is not that much worse in terms of talent than Michigan State. And again,
yeah.
it's a
I
tough
mean,
matchup, but they'll have Kent State and Portland State. They'll win both those games. So ideally, they'll be 2-0 going into that game.
that's true. It could happen. It could happen.
So I just wanted to get that out there real quick. Again, I'm leaning towards under 7.5. I think they win 6 games, make a bowl game, which would be a turnaround from last year. But 8 games, to have them win 8 games, that's a stretch. And you would
I
have to
agree.
assume
I
they
think
beat
six
Michigan
is a
State.
good number.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to who do we not have yet? That is,
Oregon State.
yeah, let's do Oregon State. Their projected or their win total is 6 games. Interesting team. They were pretty solid last year. Didn't they beat Oregon last year? Was that 2 years ago? Am I
Don't
messing up
know.
what
They
happened?
went 7-6. I don't think.
I
Yeah,
think
I'm
they
not
might.
sure. I don't think they
Hold
beat
on,
Oregon
I
last
gotta
year.
look at this real quick. Or maybe I might just be messing up right here. But they actually were pretty solid last year though. Like 7-6 for Oregon or Oregon State. I mean, that's probably
Yeah,
close to what their ceiling is. Do I think they can do it again? I actually do. If you look at their
I think
non-conference,
you're right. I think they actually did beat.
I
Or
think they
no,
did. It might have
yeah.
been 2 years ago. It might have been that 2020 COVID year.
Also, fun fact. So, head coach Jonathan Smith, entering his 5th year, I believe, he was the Oregon State quarterback in 2000 when they went 11-1 and beat Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl.
That's a great stat. This is why you're here for your Pac-12 knowledge, the
Oh yeah,
conference of
back when
champions.
3 years before I was born, I remember watching that Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, you were actually there, right? You were at that game. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
no, I was announcing the game.
Oh my
So
god.
7-6 is good. But they lost to Cal and Colorado. Uh, you know, that's this is an inconsistent team looking for some more consistency for sure.
I like this team,
They don't
dude.
have the talent of some of these other teams. Uh, but I don't know. What's their over under set at?
Uh, what is it at? It's at 6 wins.
6. Hmm.
But Jack, look at this non-con. Boise State, Fresno State, Montana State. Two of those aren't easy, but I think Oregon State is going to beat both Boise State and Fresno State. So that's like what? That's 3 wins
Ooh,
right there.
I kind of
Three
think they're
more.
gonna lose both of those games.
Really?
I I mean, dude, Fresno State. I don't. I haven't exactly. I know like they lost their head coach, but they returned their quarterback. I'm not exactly entirely sure about the roster construction of Boise State or Fresno State. I don't know what the lines will be in this game, but I think
Jack.
1-1 is a much more likely scenario than 2.5
This team,
losers.
this team has so Oregon State has so many freaking transfers on this team. It is like I don't like Treshawn Harrison, wide receiver from Florida State. Then we look at their other wide receiver. Oh wait, another transfer from Nebraska, Tyjon Lindsey. Um, I think Nolan Chance was there last year, but he's a transfer from Saddleback College. But he was pretty good last year. Listen, dude, he was 204 for 318, 65% completion percentage. He had 2,600 yards, 8.4 yards per attempt, 19 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. It's not ideal, but 150 QBR. Not terrible. BJ Baylor was the running back last year. I'm not sure if he's still. Yeah, no, he's gone. So they're starting a new running back there. Ton of transfers on defense. I really want to have this team winning 7 games, and I think they can do it. I really do. I like what they're doing over there.
I don't know if I'm with you here. I don't think this defense is really all that good. The O line is solid. They're returning quarterback Chance Nolan. who threw for 2,677 yards and 19 touchdowns, but threw 10 interceptions. Receiving core is pretty solid. They have tight end Luke Musgrave, who should be another pretty big contributor. You mentioned some of those other transfers. They lost Trayvon Bradford, who was their number one receiver last year. I just think this defense, I mean, they have talent, but the secondary. Last year, this team was ninth overall in the Pac-12 on defense. Uh, I don't know. There's some like I'm looking at their schedule, like finding 6 wins is I don't know. It's tough. It's real tough. I think they win one of the first two. I think they beat Montana State. I think they're 2-1 going into a tough stretch. I think they lose to USC. I think they lose to Utah on the road. I think they lose to Stanford on the road, to be honest, which puts them at
Wow.
2-4.
I
I
disagree.
think they lose to Washington State. I think they're 2-5. They beat Colorado. That's 3-5. Washington on the road. I think they probably win that game. That's 4 wins. Cal at home. That's 5 wins. Arizona State on the road. Like probably. I guess that's 6 wins. But find me another win or two. I don't know.
I mean, I could say that they could beat
I
man
mean Fresno State
Stanford. I think they beat
or
Stanford.
Washington or Washington State or Stanford, I guess, would be those games. But like, are they going to win all of them?
I think they could win. Dude, I think they could win 7 games.
They could. I think 7 is the ceiling, and I think 5 or 6 is more like.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
I
fine
think
with
this
that.
team wins
I'm fine
five
with
games.
that. Let's move on to um, just go in order in terms of win total. The next team on our list is UCLA. The Bruins have an over/under set at 8.5 wins. They won 8 games last year. The returning Dorian Thompson-Robinson for his 5th year, and I have a question here. I don't have the stat on me now, but is this the first time in college football history where a quarterback has started for the same team for 5 years? Because remember, the 5th year is the COVID year. And so, like, normally if quarterbacks stay for a 5th year, it's because they were redshirted. But he has started since he was a freshman. Has
Oh,
there been a quarterback in college football history who has started for 5 years at the same school?
did he start his whole freshman year?
I think
I
he
don't know.
did, or I think he started at least like towards the end of the season. He did.
Maybe. So I think this team will win 9 games.
Hmm.
I think they will win at least 8 games.
Huh.
Our major problem last year was our defensive coordinator, who is now gone. Um, we have had some coaching problems for sure. Chip Kelly and I have a very complicated relationship, but I like the squad that UCLA brought back. I mean, it starts with DTR, 5th year senior. You mentioned it. Uh, he's he's really good. I mean, he was second team All Pac-12 this year. We almost got Dylan Gabriel. We had him for a couple of days, and then it turns out DTR decided not to come to the back to go to the NFL and to come back to UCLA. I think he's a really underrated passer. I think he's very talented. Obviously, a great runner. Uh, this guy he runs the offense well. Also,
Can I say
few
something
piece
real
on
quick?
offense. Sure.
Dorian Thompson Robinson, current Heisman odds plus 8,000. That is
That
lower than Spencer Rattler. That is
oh,
lower than Auburn running back Tank Bigsby, but that is higher than USC wide receiver Jordan Addison.
that's
So
interesting. I really like those. I think he is a dark horse, serious Heisman contender.
I
If
agree.
UCLA wins 10 or 11 games, which I do not think is impossible, this guy could win the Heisman. But whatever. Obviously, not as good as Stroud, not as good as Bryce Young.
Can
He's
I
not the
hear your
top of the list.
opinion while we're on quarterback? Because we can do a deeper dive into these top
Yeah.
teams, which I would like to do. But Ethan Garbers, what is the scout on this young man?
He's good. He's definitely good. I like, he had some appearances last year in some big spots. I think he got put in. ETR had like a drive or two that I think like during the game against UST or Oregon or stuff. DTR like missed like a game or two, and Ethan Garbers really filled the role pretty well. Obviously, younger brother of Cal quarterback Chase Garbers. I like the future of this of UCLA quarterback program. We also have Justin Martin, who is the 22 recruit, who is going to be a freshman this year. He was actually in my philosophy class. It's an interesting fun fact. But he remember that game? Like he threw in a high school game. He threw like 13 touchdowns or something.
Yeah, actually, Justin Martin was one of the recruits at quarterback that I was more familiar with because he kind of blew up in that class, and I think Michigan and a bunch of other schools wanted to get him late in that cycle, and then he ultimately chose UCLA. But I mean, he's a dual threat guy. I
I
mean,
don't think it's crazy to say that UCLA is the best quarterback room in the Pac-12.
yeah, I think you're crazy.
Okay, I mean, who's better? Like
USC.
who does USC like? I did. Did
Yeah,
they
but they have
recruit
Caleb
anybody?
Williams. They have by far one
Actually,
of the
I know
best
about Caleb
players.
Williams, but obviously, but oh,
Utah.
didn't they get? They got well. The guy who's the guy? He's Arch Manning's class.
Oh, Malachi Nelson.
Yeah, but he's not there yet. But I
Oh,
agree.
he's not there yet, but again, like you like quarterback depth, but at the end of the day, like when you have one guy who's the best quarterback in the conference, like he's got
That's
to be
fair.
the
Okay,
top guy.
I'm with you there. But okay, a couple other guys in this offense. Zach Charbonnet, transfer from Michigan, rushed for 850 yards and 12 touch. Or no, that was in Michigan. Last year he rushed for 1,200 yards and 13 touchdowns. Second team All Pac-12. I think he's another guy who is definitely on NFL radars. Definitely uber talented. This is a really good offense. Our defense again has some struggles. We'll talk about that in a second. But like, I really like where the football program is looking at this point.
Yeah, they brought in some pretty good transfers, starting with Raekwon O'Neal, the transfer left tackle, anchor left tackle from Rutgers, who is on NFL radars. Should be pretty good. I mean, they needed offensive line help last year, so to go out and get your left tackle is probably left tackle is like the most important position you need on that offense, in my opinion. So to go out and get someone with the talent level of Raekwon, definitely a great pickup. They got a couple of wide receivers in the forms of Jake Bobo, Titus, hold up, Mokia, sorry, Titus Mokio Ati Malala.
Uh,
Sorry, but that was I thought I did a nice job there. um, Transfer wide receiver from Central Florida. They got a bunch of guys on this team, and then their defense. They did get some guys as well. Darius Masao, transfer linebacker from Hawaii. They picked up Azim. Uh, Azizi Hearn, graduate transfer from I believe Arizona, if I'm correct.
Wyoming, I think.
Wyoming. Okay, they got some guys. They went out and used the transfer portal. They do have a pretty young roster on defense. Uh, just looking at the projected starters, but I like 9 games here. I do like the 9 games. They have a super easy non-conference schedule with Bowling Green, Alabama State, and South Alabama. They have a bunch of teams at home that you want. Like they have Arizona at home, they have Utah at home, they have Washington at home. They have
USC at home
USC. They
too.
have USC at home, and then they go on the road to Oregon, Arizona State, Colorado, and Cal. 9 games, man. I like it.
This
I like the
team's
over here,
ceiling is 12-0 in college football playoff.
dude. They are not winning 12 games.
I agree they're not winning 12 games, but it could happen. It could happen.
It cannot happen.
Utah at home.
It
Okay, they're
cannot.
probably going to lose Utah at home. We're probably going to lose the USC at home. We're probably going to lose Oregon on the road. I think we win 9 games. But those are winnable games. The defense, there are a couple more pieces. There are some, yes, there's some, young guys, but Gabriel and Grayson Murphy are these two absolutely gigantic, uh, human beings from North Texas that are both defensive linemen. I saw these guys walking around campus like they are huge. Like Cole Calvert, another returning defensive lineman, another transfer, Jacob Sykes from Harvard, who's an interior D tackle. This D line's really good. Our secondary has some question marks, losing Quentin Lake, Quantrez Knight. Uh, you mentioned Azizi Hearn coming back. I don't know. I mean, on the offensive front, losing Dolchich, we really don't have, I mean, Jack Peterson, big recruit on the tight end front, losing Kyle Phillips. I'm a little worried about this receiving core. But quarterback, running back, D line, these are some of the strengths of the team. I think we can compete with the rest of the big dogs in the Pac-12.
12-0 UCLA would definitely be.
12-0. Kelly, redemption tour.
Now listen, I want to be okay. I want to be fair. Okay, I don't just want to like write them off to win the Pac-12 just because of UCLA. I just I think they have guys at skill positions that are really good. And I think the starting lineup on defense and offense is definitely talented. The biggest problem with UCLA is the depth, in my opinion. And if you want a team to win the Pac-12, like we saw with Utah last year, like we saw the problem with USC last year, is that you need depth. And they have a
There
lot
are
of
going to be
question marks.
injuries. I agree.
They just do.
O
And
line
listen,
maybe
like
a little bit thin. Secondary definitely thin. We'll see.
I don't want to hate on UCLA. Like I think they're gonna win 9 games, and I think that would be a really successful season for Chip
I
Kelly.
agree. If they win 9 games, I will be more than satisfied.
Yeah. Let's move on. Let's go to what do you want to go to here?
Oregon.
Let's do Oregon. Yeah. Yeah, I'm really Oregon is the team that I really want to talk about from this episode because they are so intriguing. New head coach Dan Lanning, former defensive coordinator of Georgia last year. In terms of recruiting, he has not slowed down at all. It seems like they've been beating all these guys in recruiting battles, which that's not what this podcast is about. This is about what are they going to do next year. Their over under is set at 9 wins. They have a non-conference slate at Eastern Washington, BYU, and then the big one against Georgia.
Ooh.
It's tough. It is really tough. BYU is not a gimme. Georgia is, they'll probably be double-digit underdogs against Georgia, right? Even though they have them at home.
They're not beating.
They're not going to beat Georgia.
No.
But I think they're going to beat BYU. I think they're going to beat a lot of these other teams in the Pac-12. Now, 9 wins is a lot, especially when you have an automatic loss on the schedule. I think they lose.
Wait, did they not play USC?
They should. I think they do. Are you sure?
The schedule I'm looking at. Let me look at something else. I don't
Hold
know.
up. We got to look at this because, wait, I thought.
Is this collusion? Why does Oregon not play USC?
They don't play USC?
No.
Oh.
This is weird. They're gonna lose to Georgia. They're gonna lose to Utah at home, probably.
They have UCLA at home. Listen, they have UCLA at home and they have Washington at home.
Yeah, this is favorable. And BYU at home.
I think this is a 9-win team. So I like the push here. But do you think they can win 10 games?
I think they could. I think this is an 8 or 9 win team. I think they could easily lose to BYU. I think they could lose at Washington State. I think they could lose at home against Washington. I think they could lose at home against UCLA. Will they lose all those games? No. Will they win 9 games? Probably. I think floor is closer to about 7. I think ceiling is about 10.
Can we talk about their linebacking core real quick? Because they have Noah Sewell and Justin Flo, who,
wow, yeah,
for those who watched them last year, they were probably, besides the SEC, or maybe some of the Big Ten teams, but they were probably the best linebacking core in the Pac-12 by far. And they returned both those guys back. Noah Sewell is going to be a first-round draft pick in the future. I'm extremely confident. He was amazing.
Flo too, probably, right?
And Flo, yeah. And listen, both these guys are underclassmen. That's what's so scary about this team.
Yeah.
Um, Now I will say on the defensive side, which is Coach Dan Lanning's specialty. So I don't think that they're gonna struggle. They might struggle a little bit to start the season, but I think they're gonna get that part of the roster together by the end. But they don't have a lot of depth in the defensive backs. Um, I mean, Dante Manning, sophomore, was pretty good last year. He should be pretty good this year. Um, Safety core is not that bad, but again, they're starting freshmen. Maybe they have freshmen backing him up. They went out and got some guys in the transfer portal, I believe. Taki Tamani at defensive tackle from Washington should be pretty good. They're starting, I believe, Christian Gonzalez from Colorado, cornerback. And for what Dan Lanning wants to do, which I think he wants to run a 3-3-5, which means that they're going to need a bunch of defensive backs and a lot of defensive back depth. I don't know who's going to step up right now, but I trust Dan Lanning to get the most out of his defense. On the offensive side of the ball, they lost a few guys. They lost Travis Dye to USC, who was the running back last year, who was really, really good. They had to, I think they're starting a bunch of new offensive linemen, which is a little bit scary. Um, and then the quarterback situation, which, again, we want to highlight some of the quarterback battles in the conference. Bo Nix, transfer from Auburn. He was the truth at one point in his career. Like, people thought he was going to be the Alabama killer. Uh, Super talented, former 5-star, is going to be competing with Ty Thompson, redshirt freshman. Again, like another high recruit from a few years ago. From what I've heard, the intel I've collected from training camp, Bo Nix has beaten him out for the job, but I don't think it's over yet. I think Bo Nix is the best quarterback on the roster. I think he gives him the best chance to win games. But Ty Thompson's right there with him, I've heard. So
I worry about Bo Nix. He's had a lot of ups and downs, but definitely talented. We'll see, getting put in the right situation. New offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham from Memphis, I think,
he's really
should
good,
be a
though.
lot of
Yeah,
should be a
Dillingham's
lot of
good.
fun. But these are like Dan Lanning. Real obviously, what he did at Georgia is great, but he's never been a head coach before. I mean, losing Travis Dye is big. There. I think this team will probably have the best defense in the Pac-12. Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree with that.
I think with like a couple more offensive talented pieces in terms of like the receiving core and maybe a different quarterback, I think it's a college football playoff caliber team. But as it is right
Wow.
now, no, I mean that's not crazy to say. Like, I mean, think if this, if they have Caleb Williams and a Bo Nix, like, tell me this team's not a college football playoff team.
Yeah, but
I
okay,
mean,
Jack, here's the problem. Here's the problem. Georgia is one loss. Now, listen, if they beat Georgia, then I think that they're in the driver's seat. Like, they control their own destiny. But
no, I'm with you.
you
I mean,
can't make the
here's the
playoff
thing.
with two losses.
We'll talk about this, but I think the odds a Pac-12 team makes the college football playoff are pretty solid. You
No, I
would
would
probably
disagree. I,
disagree
I
with
would
me.
disagree. I think
You're
you're
going to
wrong.
disagree, but I think the talent USC has, the defense Oregon has, the experience UCLA has, and the coaching and overall team that Utah has, I think one of those four teams could reach their maximum potential and go 12 again.
That is the hottest take I think I've heard this year.
Maybe Oregon 11-1 if they lose to Georgia.
Listen, I would love to see that. I think when the Pac-12 is good, college football in general is better. But to me, I don't see a team that's that dominant. Utah would
I
be my
think
guess, and we'll
Utah
talk about
could
it
be
later.
that team. We'll talk about them. I mean, Bama is going to make the college football playoff. Ohio State is going to make the college football playoff. After that, I think those two spots are kind of up for grabs.
I disagree. I think a Big Ten team
Clemson
is going to
will
make it.
probably run the
Yeah,
ACC and make the college football
a Big Ten team's going to make it. Maybe two Big Ten teams.
Who
Two.
besides Ohio State?
Well, if you look at Michigan's schedule,
Oh
They could afford to
my,
lose.
come
Listen,
on.
they could afford to lose one game to Ohio
Oh
State.
my,
They'll be
dude,
11
you
and
think they
1. They'll
think
probably
better
still
than
make it in.
Utah?
Jack, I'm just playing it based on what I've seen. Okay.
Okay,
We've seen the
okay,
same thing happen
guys.
over and over again. I'm not arguing that's good or bad for the sport, but you can't make the playoff with two losses. You can make the playoff with one loss to the conference champion or a number one overall team. So I can either see two SEC teams or two Big Ten teams, along with Clemson or the
This
Big
is
Ten. And
absolute discrimination against the Pac-12.
Jack,
There would be two
tell me,
SEC.
Jack, who are you taking? 11 and 1 Michigan with a loss to Ohio State, or are you taking let's see, 10 and 2 Oregon with a loss to Georgia and a loss to Utah?
Obviously, I'm taking Michigan, but I'm talking about, what if Oregon goes 11-1 with a loss to Georgia, or Michigan with 11-1 and a loss to Ohio State?
Then it probably goes to, then it's probably close, honestly.
Okay, what if Utah goes 12-0 and then Michigan
Then they'll
goes
make it.
11?
They'll make it. No, listen, if a team goes 12 and 0, they'll make it. But they're not. Sorry,
UCLA,
that's like a
but
soundbite. That's such a soundbite. But dude,
I,
can any of those teams win 12 games? Really?
even if
Really?
any of these teams win 11 games, I think they have if you win 11 games and the Pac-12 championship, I think you're winning. You're making the playoffs.
I don't think you are. I think it
You think
depends.
Utah was
I
like,
think
okay,
it
let's say
depends.
Utah goes on the road, loses to Florida, game one of the year, then rattles off 11 straight wins and wins the Pac-12. That's a college world playoff team.
It depends on, but here's the thing. They are a college football playoff team if Georgia is also a college football playoff
All
team.
right.
So then
There's a long way to
You
go.
have Alabama,
Maybe
Georgia.
Fresno State's going to make the college football playoff. We'll see. But let's talk about who's left. We got USC and Utah.
Yeah, it's up to you, whatever one you want to go to.
Let's do USC.
Okay, USC, the over-unders at 9 wins. Um, Non-conference, they have Rice, Fresno State, and Notre Dame.
Damn, Fresno State's got a non-conference gauntlet.
Yeah, I know, like these guys are Fresno State, man.
Oregon State, USC. Actually, I guess it was
They're out here
Connecticut
playing. Yeah,
at
man.
UConn. That's a toughie right there.
I'll let you talk first because I want to get my full argument laid out for this team.
Okay, I think USC is, as much as I hate to admit it, obviously, really talented. I think this team will probably win 9 games. Uh, the big storylines. Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley is a top five, maybe top three, in my opinion, head coach in college football. Bringing with him freshman quarterback Caleb Williams, who was excellent. Beat Spencer Rattler, who was like a consensus top five Heisman favorite, out for the starting job. Even the recruiting, it's it's USC. They're dominating Southern California recruiting. They brought along Jordan Addison from Pitt, who is a top 3 or 5 wide receiver in the country this year.
He's Jack.
Uh,
He's top two, and he may not be two.
I think I would take JSN over him. I think I would, Butte from LSU, maybe.
He's good. That's the point. That's the
There's
point.
whatever. He's top three. Uh, you know, Keaton Slovis transferred out. Jackson Dart transferred out. Making way for Williams. The defense. They have some big transfers. Oklahoma defensive coordinator out. Did Lincoln Riley bring both coordinators with him to USC?
Um,
That I think he did. I think he got both offense and defensive coordinator.
man, he might have.
Yeah. The
I forgot.
defensive
Wait,
line,
who's their offensive
Tuitu
coordinator?
Tuiloto, one of the nation's best defensive tackles, is a definitely, future NFL defensive end. Nick Figueroa on the outside, Romeo Height transfer from Auburn. Uh, the secondary, potentially some question marks. But I think in terms of, The recruiting they've done, the coaches they've brought in, the resources, even running back Travis Dye. You mentioned we were talking about Oregon. This is a good squad. This is dangerous. If they can put it together, I mean, this is another team I think with Pac-12 championship, if not college football playoff potential.
Yeah, this is a really good team, and I want to start with the offense because it is going to be the best offense in the Pac-12, maybe the best offense in the entire country, and I say that with Alabama sitting there kind of looking menacing. But Caleb Williams, incredible.
I mean, well, timeout. You think Ohio State is not the best offense unequivocally in college football?
Oh yeah, wait, yeah, Ohio State's definitely the best, and then probably
Ohio State's
and then
crazy,
by
first of all. But I agree, no, like USC, best offense in the Pac-12,
Pac-12 for sure.
frankly,
Pac-12
probably
for
will not
sure.
be close.
Yeah, Caleb Williams, Travis Dye, Jordan Addison, Mario Williams, another transfer from
Mario
Oklahoma.
Williams, too.
Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's son, transfer from Colorado. Offensive line, now listen, people really hated on this offensive line last year, and that was definitely backed up by what they did. Like the offensive line last year was really bad, but they brought in some new guys. I think they're going to be a lot better this year. Then we look on the defensive end of the ball. Again, they have some problems, but they brought in some really solid freshmen. Like Domani Jackson at cornerback was a 5-star, top 10 player in the class. I think he might battle for a starting spot. I think he might actually be a starter at cornerback for USC, which would be huge. This team's really good. They just are. Uh, in terms of the over under, I kind of like the push here. I think the 9 wins seems correct. I wouldn't
Yeah.
be surprised if they beat Notre Dame, to be honest. But I can definitely see them losing a game they're not supposed to lose. That just seems like kind of like the way the roster is built. Like they can explode in terms of big games, but they could also kind of fizzle out at some points in the season. But 9 wins, I mean maybe 10 wins. I think this team is up there with Utah as the team that could make the college football playoff if they get lightning in a bottle. But yeah, I
Yeah,
do
I
like
mean,
nine
this
wins.
I'm not confident in taking. I would probably lean towards the under, but I agree. Like, I think this is a 9-win team. I mean, but you got to remember, this team won 4 games last year. But what Lincoln Riley is like, this is it's different, and I agree they have some potential for, maybe in year one, not totally reaching all their goals. But Caleb Williams has 2 more years too. I mean, ooh, I am scared to reach those.
Yep. Let's move on to our last team. I think they're the conference favorites. We got the Utah Utes under Kyle Whittingham. Had an amazing season last year. Like absolutely amazing season. They won 10 games. They should have beat Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. If Jackson Smith and Jigba like was human. But they were just so good. They returned like basically their entire team, which is crazy to say. Cameron Rising, who was a quarterback last year, was absolutely spectacular last year. Like, I don't know if there's a quarterback in the country that overperformed expectations like he did. So
Well,
there's nothing to say about that. Like he
Cam Rising, he went above and beyond what anyone thought he would. People didn't even think he was gonna be the starter. Charlie Brewer was the starter, and now he's playing at Liberty. I mean, reading the Bible or whatever. I mean, Cam Rising almost won the Rose Bowl. They had some losses, but maybe it's gonna be really hard to replace Devin Lloyd, obviously. Uh, but you know this pass rush is really scary, and their
and listen,
secondary is
dude,
really good.
their
Uh,
defense got better
and
in the
What
offseason.
Kyle Whittingham has done with this team has been really impressive. I mean, I think this team will win the Pac-12. I think they did a great job last year. I don't know. You want to go through their schedule?
Yeah, I just want to go through the defense real quick because
Okay.
it was an amazing unit last year, and I think it's even better this year. They picked up a stud freshman linebacker, Lander Barton. who, for those who are interested in NFL draft stuff or like future NFL projections, this kid was probably my favorite linebacker recruit in the entire 2022 class, which is crazy to say, but he is really just a great pass rusher, understands the game, he's quick. He's trying to fill that Devin Lloyd spot from last year, and I think he can do it. Not maybe not this year, but maybe when he's a sophomore or a junior. They went and got transfer uh, linebacker Muhammad Diabate from Florida, who is probably going to start for them this year. And the main problem with this team last year was cornerback depth and cornerback just experience. They returned their guys at in the secondary. It's still going to be, I think, probably their weakest unit on the field. But again, they have an extra year of experience. They shouldn't have the situation last year where they had to start a running back at defensive back because they had too many injuries. And then in terms of their offensive line, really, 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 really good. I can't stress that enough. Like the best offensive line in the Pac-12, I think, and I'm not sure if it's close. Do you agree with me there?
I mean, I think Oregon's is pretty good too, but I agree with you that it's definitely one of the best.
Yeah, and then going into their schedule, they have Southern Utah, San Diego State, at Florida, and then they have their conference schedule. I think they beat Florida. I think they beat San Diego State. I think they go 10-2 would be my guess. So the over of the 9 wins.
I, good number. I could see a road loss at Florida. I could see a road loss at UCLA. I think they'll probably beat USC at home. They maybe Oregon on the road is a question mark. But they'll probably win two. I think this. Honestly, I think it's a 10 or an 11 win team.
Huh.
I like the over. Is it 9.5 or is it 9?
It's 9 exactly.
I think I like over 9. I would be surprised if this team won less than 9 games.
Hmm. I kind of agree with you there.
Yeah,
Man, this team's just good. This team's
I'm with
really.
you. This is this like this, yeah. In terms of just well-roundedness, a lot of these other teams like USC, a lot of potential. UCLA, it's pretty well-rounded, but definitely does not have the same potential Utah has. Oregon, another team, a lot of potential. Utah has a very high floor and a very high ceiling. Uh, I think they have the highest floor of any Pac-12 team for sure.
Yeah, this team is gonna be really good. This team is going to be really good. Now, for the last part of this Pac-12 overview, I just want to hear your Pac-12 champion prediction. Yeah, one pick, one team.
Um, Honestly, I hmm, hmm. I want to go. hmm. Utah is the safe choice in my mind, but I'm gonna take USC.
I was going to agree with you there. I think USC is also my pick.
I think Lincoln. I think the Pac like Lincoln Riley is probably the best coach the Pac-12 has had in since who ever. I mean,
I mean, I guess you could say like Coach Peterson at Washington, like before he
yeah.
retired, he was like really good.
I mean, we'll see. It just I think USC they 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 have so much money that like they're 4-8 last year. It's like that is not gonna happen again. Like they
Yeah, and
just
also I like to think if it does come down to Utah and USC and that matchup, Utah is at home, but I think USC their strengths kind of align with Utah's weaknesses. Like USC is going to be a great passing air raid attack, and Utah's problem last year was their cornerback depth, and their ability to kind of keep the play in front of them. So I think that kind of plays into USC's hands. And I think USC is going to beat Utah on the road, which would be huge.
Yeah. All
Okay.
right.
I think that wraps up our Pac-12 over under team preview. Um, I'm trying to think, what should we do for our next episode?
So what do we got? We got Big Ten, SEC, and
ACC.
ACC.
Ah, man, I'm kind of thinking a Big Ten episode.
I'm definitely down for Big Ten, to be honest.
All right. Well, I guess you guys can see that later in the week when we record that video. Again, thanks for listening. We're inching closer to college football season. And so here at After the Whistle, we are going to be offering a ton of content to get you guys up to date for the season. See y'all later and go blue.